So when I was in high school, I was completely obsessed with Bob Dylan, and I would draw him all the time, and I would like paint paintings of him, and I did a mural of him on my friend's door. And I was also trying to organize a walkathon against hunger. And I had a friend who knew someone who was working on his house that he was building in Malibu. And I got his address. And I was thinking I should go and ask him to perform at our walkathon against hunger. So I went to his house, and I found a hole under the fence. So I snuck under the fence, and this guy starts walking towards me. And he's not wearing a shirt, and he's barefoot, and he's with a dog. And he looks just like Bob Dylan, except that he's blonde. And he comes up to me and he says, "What are you doing here?" And he just sounds just like Bob Dylan. And I'm like, "I'm looking for Bob Dylan." And he's like, "Well, he's not here." And I'm like, "Well, who are you then?" And he's like, "I'm the gardener." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "You could have been shot. I could have shot you." Okay. And he's like, "What do you want with him anyway?" I said, "Well, we want him to do a benefit concert for a walkathon against hunger." And he's like, "Where, you ever seen hungry people?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Where?" And I said, "In Iran." And he's like, "Okay. But you can't just come in here like that. You got to go through the proper channels." And I'm like, "Okay, so what are the proper channels?" And he's like, "I'm not going to tell you that. You have to figure that out by yourself." I'm like, "Okay, well, thanks." And he says, "Let me explain something to you." And he like kneels on the ground and he draws a line in the sand. He says, "You see this? This is private property. You can do whatever you want on this side of the line, but you can't cross over to this side. Do you understand that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know where private property is." He's like, "Okay, great. So get the hell out of here." So, I left, and that was the end of that. And then a week later, I'm reading TV Guide magazine, and there's like an interview with Bob Dylan. And it says that he was on the beach with a white dog, and nobody recognized him because his hair was blonde. I'm like, oh, fuck, that was Bob Dylan. So then a year later, I was in college, and I just decided to become a filmmaker, and I just bought a Super 8 camera, and I was on my way to Europe to make a film of Goethe's Faust. That was my idea. And I'm on the airplane, and I see this guy, and I'm like, that looks just like Bob Dylan. And there were all these like musician guys all around me, and this one guy was like drumming on his tray table. He had like long hair, and I asked him, "What do you do?" And he said, "Well, I'm a musician." I said, "Who do you play for?" He said, "I play for Bob Dylan." I'm like, "Is that him right there?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh my God." And so Bob Dylan sits down right behind me, like he's in the seat right behind me, and I'm looking through the little crevice between the two seats. I'm just staring at him, and he sees me staring at him. He's looking away, and he's like, and I just keep looking at him because I just can't take my eyes off him. And then he just eventually gets up, and he goes and sits in another seat. And it was this period when he had this black girlfriend who was like a born-again Christian, and it was right before his Christian phase, and he like lays down on her lap. So I don't know what to, I'm like really nervous, and I want to think of something to say, so I'm too nervous though, so I write him a note. And the note basically says, "Hi, my name's Caveh Zahedi, I'm a filmmaker, and I want to make a film with you, and I want you to play the lead in Goethe's Faust." So I go over to where he is, and it looks like he's sleeping. And I tell his girlfriend, I wanted to give this to Bob Dylan. And she said, "Well, he's sleeping." And I said, "Well, okay." So I just put it under his head. And I go back to my seat, and I'm waiting for him to wake up. And it's a long flight, and he actually sleeps for 8 hours straight. And I'm just waiting the whole time, really nervous about what I'm going to say when he wakes up. And finally, they're starting to land. So I notice that like he's up again. So I go over there, and I say, "Hi, did you get my note?" And he kind of shakes his head, and he goes, "Uh-uh." And then I say, "Well, I put it under your head. It should be here somewhere." And so he gets up, and he gets on his hands and knees, and he's looking under the seat. And I get on my hands and knees too, and we're both looking under the seat for this note. And he looks at me, he's like, "Uh-huh." And I'm like, "Well, I guess, I don't know what happened to it." "Well, like I said, if you find it, I'll be sitting on that seat right over there." And he's like, "Uh-huh." And I'm waiting for him to find the note and come talk to me about this movie. And he never comes, of course. And the plane lands, and I get off the plane. And I'm kind of kicking myself for not talking to him. And then I see these like paparazzi guys who are like waiting at the gate. And I'm like, "What are you guys waiting for?" And he said, "Well, we heard a rumor that Bob Dylan was on the plane, but I don't think it's true." I said, "No, it is true." He goes, "Oh my God, what's he wearing?" And I said, "Well, he's wearing like a pink shirt, and he's got like a little black vest, and like, oh, everybody, he's on the plane, here's what he's wearing." I'm like, "Okay, I'm just going to stay here and watch what happens." So Bob Dylan comes out, and they all start taking pictures, and they're going like, click, 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 ch-ch-ch. And I'm like, wait a minute, I have my camera on me, so I should film him. So I take out my camera, And I get in front of the whole pack of paparazzis, and I'm like really 2 feet from his face. And I just hold the camera up to his face, and I'm just going zzz. And he looks up at me and looks me right in the eyes through the camera with this look of like utter contempt. And it's like, you too, huh? Like we were friends and I betrayed him. And I lower the camera and I'm just like, oh my God, Bob Dylan hates me.